Hello everyone, bonjour, and welcome back to the channel. I didn't plan to fall for my boss. I didn't even plan to get this job. I just wanted to breathe again. It had been 3 months since I quit my last agency. 3 months of rejection emails, cheap instant coffee, and that quiet voice in my head whispering, "You're not good enough anymore." So when I saw the job post from Ellison Studio, one of the top design firms in New York, I hesitated. It felt too far from where I was, both in skill and in spirit. But something in me, maybe the last flicker of hope, clicked apply anyway. The day of the interview, it rained. Of course it did. I remember running into the lobby, clutching my damp portfolio like it was armor. My reflection in the elevator doors looked tired. Messy bun, nervous smile, dark circles that no concealer could hide. When I walked into the meeting room, Daniel Ellison was already there. Tall, sharp suit, calm in a way that made everyone else nervous. He didn't look up immediately, just kept flipping through my portfolio, page by page, as if he were dissecting my life story through colors and lines. "Sit," he said, finally. His voice was low, precise. No smile, no small talk. I sat. He closed the portfolio and looked at me. For a few seconds, no words, just his eyes, quiet but intense, studying. Then he said, "You have potential, but your recent work feels safe, like you're afraid to make mistakes." I swallowed hard, because he was right. "I've had a rough year. I guess I stopped taking risks." He leaned back in his chair. "Design is about emotion, Maya. People don't connect with perfection. They connect with honesty." For a moment, the room was silent again, except for the rain tapping against the glass. That sentence, "they connect with honesty," would echo in my mind for weeks after. Then he stood, extended a hand. "We'll be in touch." I walked out thinking, that's it, I blew it. But the next morning, I got the email. "Welcome to Ellison Studio. Your first project briefing is Monday, 9 a.m. I stared at the screen for a long minute, not sure whether to scream or cry, because I had no idea then that the man who'd just become my boss would also become the person who taught me how to feel again. The first few weeks were intense. Daniel didn't raise his voice, but his silence carried weight. He noticed every detail, the spacing of a line, the color tone of a logo, the emotion in a design that wasn't quite there yet. Sometimes he'd stand behind me as I worked, arms crossed, saying nothing for long minutes, just observing. And somehow that silence made my pulse race more than any compliment could. But he was fair. He never humiliated. He pushed, he guided indirectly. Every critique felt like both a challenge and a lesson. One afternoon, he stopped by my desk and pointed at my screen. "Why that shade of blue?" he asked. "It feels calm, safe." Exactly. But what if the client doesn't want calm? What if they want to feel something? He walked away before I could answer, leaving me staring at the screen, at the color that suddenly felt too quiet. That night, I stayed late, reworked everything, and for the first time in months, I felt alive while creating. When I sent him the new version, I expected silence, maybe another quiet nod of disapproval. But the next morning, he simply said, "Better. That's honesty." And smiled. Just a small, rare smile. The kind that felt like sunlight after a long storm. That was the moment something shifted. I didn't know what it was yet, admiration, curiosity, or something deeper. But I knew this. Daniel Ellison wasn't just a boss. He was a mirror, reflecting both my flaws and my hidden strength. And maybe, just maybe, he was the reason I'd start believing in myself again. Sometimes, people come into your life not to fix you, but to show you what's still beautiful inside you. The distance. There's something strange about working close to someone you're not supposed to feel anything for. You tell yourself it's just respect, admiration, curiosity, but deep down, you know it's more, and you pretend not to notice it because you have to. That's how it was with Daniel. Every morning, I'd see him in that same dark suit, holding his coffee like it was part of his uniform. He never rushed, never stumbled. Everything about him was controlled. While the rest of us laughed or complained about deadlines, he just worked, calm, focused, untouchable. But sometimes, when he looked at me, it felt like he saw straight through the layers I tried to hide. Once, during a late-night project, it was just the two of us left in the office. The city lights painted gold across the windows. I was adjusting a poster design when he spoke, without looking up from his laptop. "You overthink your work," he said. I froze mid-click. "Excuse me?" "You hesitate. Every decision takes too long. You keep asking for permission, from me, from yourself." He finally turned to look at me, his expression unreadable. Creativity needs courage, Maya. You can't design while doubting your own voice. I swallowed hard, staring at the screen. It's hard to be brave when your boss is watching. For a second, I thought I went too far. But then he smiled. Small, unexpected, the kind that softened everything. "So stop seeing me as your boss," he said quietly. "See me as someone who wants you to do your best work." That night, I couldn't sleep. Those words replayed in my head. Stop seeing me as your boss. But how could I not? Because when Daniel spoke, I listened. When he moved, I noticed. And when he smiled, I felt something shift inside me that I wasn't ready to name. Weeks passed, and the studio grew busier. Deadlines, pitches, client calls. Daniel became both the anchor and the storm. Calm on the surface, chaos beneath. He pushed everyone hard, but somehow pushed me harder. One day, during a team meeting, he disagreed with my design in front of everyone. "It's too emotional," he said flatly. "The client wants clarity, not poetry." His words stung more than they should have. I nodded, keeping my voice steady. But inside, something cracked. After the meeting, I went to the rooftop, my quiet place to breathe. Minutes later, I heard footsteps. Daniel. "I wasn't trying to embarrass you. You're good." Too good to hide behind emotion. I turned to him. "But isn't emotion what makes design powerful?" He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "Emotion without control is chaos, and chaos doesn't sell." It wasn't what I wanted to hear, but it was exactly who he was. Still, as he turned to leave, he added softly, "But sometimes chaos creates beauty, too." And then he was gone. After that, something changed between us. Not in words. We still talked about colors, layouts, deadlines, but in silence, in the way he stood near me, but never too close.
and how his eyes lingered a little longer than necessary. I noticed the way his hands moved when he explained something, calm, precise. The way his voice lowered when he spoke my name. The way my heart betrayed me every single time. I told myself it was just admiration. But admiration doesn't make your chest tighten when you hear his footsteps behind you. Admiration doesn't make you replay conversations in your head long after he's gone. I tried to build walls. Focus on work. Focus on growth. But he had a way of breaking through without even trying. One evening, we were preparing a big presentation. Everyone else had left again. He stood behind me, reviewing the final slides, then quietly said, "You've improved." I smiled, not looking up. "Because you keep scaring me into it." He chuckled, low, warm, unexpected. Good fear can make great art. When I turned to look at him, our eyes met, and for a second, everything went still. The world outside the glass, the hum of the office lights, even my breath. And I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just admiration anymore. It was connection. Silent, forbidden, and growing stronger every day. So I looked away first, pretending to fix the slides. And he stepped back, keeping that careful distance, the one we both knew we had to protect. That night, walking home through the city lights, I replayed everything in my head. His voice, his smile, the way he said, "You've improved." And I wondered, was I imagining it all? Or was he fighting the same quiet storm inside him? I'll never know for sure. But deep down, I think Daniel and I both understood something we'd never admit out loud. Sometimes the strongest connections are the ones you can't name, the ones that stay between glances, between words, between what's right and what feels real. The crack. You never notice the moment the line starts to blur. It doesn't happen with a touch or a look. It happens quietly, in the space between words, in the things you don't say. For weeks, Daniel and I kept pretending. He was my boss, I was his designer. Simple, professional, safe. Until the night it wasn't. It started with a project, a huge client, a campaign that could make or break the company. The pressure was insane. Daniel became even more focused, sharp like a blade. Every detail mattered. Every mistake felt personal. And I worked harder than ever, because deep down, I wanted to prove something. Not just to him, but to myself. One night, we were the last two in the office again. The storm outside screamed against the glass. My screen flickered with colors and shapes, but my brain was fog. He noticed. "Go home, Maya." "I can't," I said. "The client meeting's tomorrow. The layout's still off." He sighed. "Perfection doesn't mean progress. You need rest." I laughed weakly. "You should tell yourself that." That made him look at me. Really look at me. For a long second, the air between us felt heavy. Then, quietly, he said, "You're right." He walked over, his expression softer than I'd ever seen. "You push yourself too hard," he said. "You don't have to prove anything." I smiled, trying to keep it light. "That's rich coming from you." He almost smiled back. Almost. "Touché." We stood there in silence, the storm outside echoing the one inside my chest. Then, suddenly, the power went out. Everything went black, except for the city lights bleeding through the windows.
For a moment, it felt like the world had stopped. I froze. Well, that's perfect. He laughed quietly. Guess the universe wants us to rest after all. We sat on the floor, waiting for the lights to come back on. The room felt smaller, quieter, and for the first time, he didn't feel like my boss. He felt human, tired, real. He told me about his past, things he never shared before. How he built his career from nothing. How success made him lonelier than failure ever did. I used to think control was strength, but sometimes control is just fear in disguise. That line stayed with me because it wasn't about work anymore. It was about life, about me. I wanted to tell him how much his words meant, how much he had changed me. But before I could, the lights flickered back on. And just like that, the moment was gone. The walls came back up. He stood, straightening his shirt. We should finish the presentation. Back to work. Back to pretending. The next morning, everything felt different. I couldn't look at him the same way anymore. And maybe he couldn't either, because he started avoiding eye contact. Meetings became shorter, conversations became colder. He stopped staying late. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, because I missed the silences, the unspoken comfort, the way he made me feel seen. I told myself it was for the best, that whatever I was feeling wasn't real. It was just exhaustion, admiration, confusion. But deep down I knew there was a crack now. Small, invisible, but spreading fast. A week later, during a client presentation, he interrupted me mid-sentence. His tone was sharp, almost too sharp. "We don't make emotional decisions, Maya. Stick to the data." I bit my tongue, nodded, finished the pitch. Everyone applauded when it ended, but all I felt was heat in my chest. After the meeting, I went straight to the restroom and just stood there, staring at myself in the mirror. The girl looking back at me wasn't just tired, she was breaking. Because it wasn't about work anymore. It was about him. And I hated that. Later that day, he came to my desk. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, but followed him to the rooftop. The air was cool, the sky bleeding into sunset. He didn't look like the boss who just embarrassed me. He looked regretful. "I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. It wasn't fair." I said, "It's fine." But my voice betrayed me. He shook his head. "No, it's not. You didn't deserve that." I took a deep breath. "Then why do you do it?" Silence. Finally, he said, "Because I care too much about the work, and maybe too much about you." Time froze. He looked away, his jaw tight. "That's why I need to keep my distance. You deserve clarity, not confusion." And before I could say anything, he walked away, leaving me there with the sunset, the wind, and a heart that didn't know how to unfeel. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Some cracks don't destroy things. They just show where the light comes in." But the truth was, the light hurt too. The hardest goodbyes are the ones that never get said. The storm. They say silence can protect you, but too much silence, it starts to drown you. After that rooftop conversation, Daniel and I barely spoke. We kept everything professional, the polite
Good morning, the quick updates, the polite smiles. Nothing more, nothing less. But underneath that calm surface, everything was breaking. I threw myself into work. Design after design, project after project. Maybe if I stayed busy enough, I wouldn't feel the ache every time I passed his office door. But feelings don't fade just because you ignore them. They wait, quietly, until something sets them free again. It happened during the final pitch for the big campaign. The client wanted last-minute changes, and Daniel insisted we redo everything overnight. The whole team was exhausted. People complained, tempers rose, but I stayed quiet. I just wanted to get through it. One last time. Around midnight, everyone left.
Except him. Except me. I was fixing the final layout when I heard his footsteps. He stopped behind me, close enough that I could feel his presence. "Maya," he said quietly. I didn't look up. "I know. Deadline's tomorrow." That's not what I meant. I froze, my hand hovering over the mouse. He took a breath. "This isn't working." I turned around, confused. "The project?" He shook his head. "Us." My heart dropped. "There is no us." He met my eyes, tired, conflicted. "Exactly, and that's the problem." He walked closer, his voice low but steady. "I keep trying to be the boss who follows rules, the man who keeps everything under control. But every time I see you, that control disappears." My throat tightened. "Daniel!" He kept going. "You make me feel things I'm not supposed to feel. And I hate it because it's not fair to you. You deserve freedom, not confusion from your boss." I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. "Stop calling yourself my boss. That's not who you are to me." Silence. Just rain hitting the windows. And then he stepped closer. "Then who am I to you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because I didn't have the courage to name it. He sighed, turning away. That's what I thought. Something inside me snapped. All the quiet, all the holding back, it exploded. "I think you don't feel the same?" I said with my voice shaking. "You think I don't fight this every single day?" He stopped, still facing away. "I wake up and tell myself to be professional, to act normal, to forget how your voice sounds when you say my name. But I can't. I can't keep pretending this means nothing." When he turned back, his eyes were filled with something between pain and relief. "Maya." And then, for the first time, he said nothing else. He just pulled me into his arms. The storm outside roared, and for once, I didn't care. It wasn't a perfect moment. It wasn't even peaceful. It was messy, desperate, honest, like two people trying to hold on to something that the world would never understand. When he finally pulled back, his voice was low. "This can't last." I nodded, tears running down my face. "I know." But neither of us moved. We stood there, holding on to something that was already slipping away. The next morning, he didn't come to the office. Neither did I. I walked through the rain instead, down the streets that led nowhere, trying to breathe.
trying to forget the warmth of his hands, the sound of his voice, the way he looked at me like I was both the reason and the risk. Love shouldn't feel like this, like drowning and breathing at the same time. But maybe that's what happens when you fall for someone who was never meant to be yours. Days passed. He returned to work. Everything went back to normal. Meetings, reports, polite nods. No more long talks, no more late nights. Just distance. Clean, sharp, professional. But sometimes when our eyes met, I saw it. The same storm still living behind his calm. And that's when I realized the hardest part isn't losing someone. It's pretending you never had them. That night I wrote in my journal, some storms don't destroy. They just show you who's worth surviving for. Love is not always meant to stay. Sometimes it just teaches you how deep you can feel. After Daniel. It's been 3 months since Daniel left. No calls, no messages, no "how are you?" Just silence, the kind that hums between two people who once meant everything to each other. At first, I tried to fill it with work, with noise, with late-night playlists, and coffee that tasted like regret. But silence has its own voice. It teaches you things you don't want to learn. About loneliness. About yourself. The office feels different now. His corner still catches morning light, soft and golden, the way he liked it. I don't avoid it anymore. I just walk past it, slowly, respectfully, like passing an old photograph. There's no anger left, just peace. Strange, quiet peace. Some nights I open my old design drafts, the ones we worked on together. He once told me, design isn't just what you see, Maya, it's what you feel. I didn't understand it back then. I do now. Healing is design. You start with broken pieces, sharp, mismatched, incomplete. Then slowly you learn how to put them together again, until one day you recognize yourself in the colors. Last weekend, I went to the coast alone. The wind was wild, carrying salt and freedom. I sat by the water and thought, not about him, but about me. I was just there, present, breathing. And that felt enough. When I came home, I opened my laptop and started a new project. Something personal. No clients, no deadlines. Just me and the blank canvas. I called it Light Studies. It's a collection of photos, sketches, and colors that remind me of hope. Soft yellows, dusty pinks, sky blues. Every day, I add one more image, one more piece of light. Sometimes love doesn't come back. Sometimes it leaves to teach you how to see yourself again. And maybe that's the point. Maybe healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering who you were before the pain. I still think of Daniel sometimes. Not with tears, but with gratitude. He was a chapter, not the whole story. And as I close my sketchbook tonight, the last line I write is simple. The sun still rises, and so will I. Maya's story isn't just about love. It's about rediscovering yourself when everything falls apart. Sometimes losing someone
helps you find your strength, your voice, your light again. Every word you've just read is more than English. It's emotion in motion. Because when you feel the language, you start to live it. Let Maya's story remind you. Learning English isn't about perfection. It's about connection. It's about understanding stories, hearts, and healing. If this touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more English stories that teach not just words, but life itself.